Hello, welcome to Meet Me at the Movies. Noel T. Manning II, hanging out with Thomas Manning, and we are talking all sorts of cinema today, including movies with 3 in the title. And hopefully we're going to be playing a little bit of a game called Pinball. Hopefully we're going to get to that. But before all of those coming attractions there that I shared with you, Thomas, let's do a quick reflection on this little thing that we call the Oscars. That we got a chance to enjoy, and shout out to you for spending some time also on WJZY, being able to shout out Meet Me at the Movies in that. Actually, you didn't. The anchors shouted it out as you gave a reflection of the Oscars for QC. Was it Queen City News?
Queen City
right?
News, that's right. Yeah, I guess our audience is growing and we're reaching more markets. So yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Well, man, let's get some thoughts on the Oscars. For me, I'll go ahead and just dive in. I found it just a complete joy. I came away with this really happy vibe as we walked away from it, and even reflected on it as we continued to reflect on it. I've just continued to just have this smile on my face.
Absolutely, and a moment early on in the ceremony that I think you and I both agreed that even if the rest of the ceremony was a total disaster, we would have still gotten this one moment, and it's when Ke Huy Quan won for Best Supporting Actor for Everything Everywhere All at Once. And of course, we followed his story over the award season, really over the past year, and his speech, this quote was one that really stuck with you and me and with a lot of other people all around the world. He said, "Dreams are something you have to believe in. I almost gave up on mine. To all of you out there, please keep your dreams alive."
Man, I'm still getting chills just hearing you say it. I'm still getting chills. And you and I both said, okay, if nothing else good happens the rest of the night, this is worth it. And I felt that way. But fortunately, the night continued to have those kinds of stories. It was really a celebration of legends and celebration of comebacks. When I look at Brendan Fraser, a great comeback story there, and Jamie Lee Curtis, someone who's been in the industry her whole life, and Michelle Yeoh, Everything Everywhere All at Once. For us, we were very happy to see it gain the attention and gain the love that it had, and 7 Oscars. Extremely happy about that, Thomas.
Yes, that was one that we saw about a year ago at this point, and you and I both were like, this is one that's going to be on a year-end list and probably one of our best of the decade lists once we reach the end of the 2020s, and I think well-deserved on all accounts for Everything it won.
Absolutely, and if you have not seen that movie, if you're looking for something a little different, a different kind of Oscar win, that's one that we've been recommending for about a year now, and I'm not going to stop now. Any final thoughts before we dive into this guy who loves to beat the mess out of people with every kind of instrument possible? Any final comments about the Oscars?
I guess one more comment. I'm glad that RRR walked away with the win for Best Original Song for Natu Natu. And yeah, you can see Noel doing a little bit of the choreography there. I don't know if that's quite a one-to-one comparison, but it's close enough. It's close enough. And so yeah, I'm glad that we can consider RRR to be an Oscar-winning film now, because that was one of my favorites from last year. And yeah, just great to see it get some love.
Awesome. And if you're looking for those dance moves, we do have a TikTok of Thomas and I doing that. No, we don't, but we should. We should have a TikTok of doing the Natu Natu dance.
Yeah. I mean, now that you've planted the seed, so.
I know people would pay good money to see that, or either good money not to see it. Well, man, you and I got a chance to check out a pretty early screening of John Wick 3, and you and I both. Four. I'm sorry.
That's the second time in the show that you messed that part up, but it's okay. Right. It's all right.
Well, and maybe there's a reason for that for me. But we did enjoy the first 3 John Wick films. I was a big fan of the first one when it came out. It was this really sliding under the radar kind of action film that did things differently and explored this man who really had this deep love for his dog, and it was much deeper than that, of course. But there was something about his love for a dog that sparked the inciting incident in that original. and dogs have continued to be a part of this franchise throughout, including episode 4 of John Wick the Fourth. So give me your thoughts of Mr. Reeves back in action in the black suit, black tie, black shirt.
Yeah, so as I walked out of the theater, I found myself feeling somewhere between pure exhaustion and raw adrenaline. This is a film, it's 2 hours and 50 minutes long. It didn't need to be almost 3 hours, but I'm glad it was. This was basically the director's cut, and we got it all. Everything that Chad Stahelski and Keanu Reeves wanted to do as far as pushing the boundaries of action filmmaking, it's on full display here. And I think this is a film that seeks to answer the question, how much action is humanly possible to fit into a movie?
Yes, and they did it in multiple scenes that felt like 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes long per episode of fight scenes. It felt like watching many episodes of series. Is what it felt like, for sure, for me anyway.
Yeah, and we get some nunchuck action in here. We get some action with playing cards, also incendiary shotguns. But at the same time, there is so much action that I still find myself asking for a little bit more variety in certain scenes. And I think that's just because we hold these movies to such a high standard in that regard. You look at the third John Wick movie, within the first 10 minutes, he was killing people with a book in a library. Then we got the incredible knife sequence also in the first 30 minutes of John Wick 3. And then riding through Central Park on a horse, fighting against motorcycle-bound assailants.
Yes.
And then he goes to the desert in Morocco. And here in John Wick 4, there's a scene early on that takes place in a desert landscape again. And I thought this was going to be a sign of more things to come in terms of
right.
John fighting across different, diverse natural environments all over the world. But here he sticks mostly to the cities for the rest of the movie, which isn't a bad thing in itself because the filmmakers, they do brilliant things with the cities as backdrops and all the nooks and crannies within the cities. But I still wish we'd gotten more varied terrain. Maybe take John Wick to the Appalachian Mountains or take him to an Irish fishing village like we saw in the Banshees of Inisherin or the rolling hills of New Zealand like we see in the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings movies. I would like to see John Wick take on those terrains, see how he fares.
Yeah, this was very much urban landscape as far as the battles are concerned, and there were battles aplenty from a story standpoint and a dialogue standpoint. The story was pretty simple, Thomas, and I'll let you maybe in a sentence you can talk about the story, but the urban landscape fights, and there were fights throughout. I'd say the first 15, 20 minutes there were fewer, but man, once it started, it did not let up. You talked about the length of this film. The length of this film was a drawback to me, and I said it coming out to one of the studio reps. I said, this really did feel like a director's cut. I don't know what else they could have put into this film. The creativity that we've seen in fight scenes previously that we loved, and you mentioned a few of those. I don't feel like there were as many in this. I felt like it was kind of the rinse, wash, and repeat, seeing the same types of fights over and over again, even in the same types of locations. There was one scene that was taking place in this room where they were hiding behind these different components to fight each other, and we'd seen that kinds of thing before, and we've also seen, I don't know how many close-up headshot I can see in a film and do it in a creative way. We continue to see those, but less creatively, just kind of the same kinds of stuff. And dialogue, John Wick had maybe 5 minutes of total dialogue in this whole movie, and I'm exaggerating, under exaggerating. He had a bit more than that, but not a lot, Thomas. Not a lot of dialogue from John Wick.
Yeah, and some of the supporting cast gets probably a lot more dialogue than John Wick actually. And there are certain sequences early on in the film that focus more on the supporting cast and the supporting characters. We have Donnie Yen, Hiroyuki Sanada, and Rina Sawayama. And I think focusing on their characters was the filmmaker's way of teasing that the franchise has to evolve and change trajectory at some point if it's going to continue. And we already know there's a spinoff coming up with Ana de Armas, the ballerina, and she's a Russian assassin. And they do tease more future storylines and character conflicts as the film goes on. But one person I want to talk about in particular that I mentioned, Donnie Yen, who is a true legend of Eastern action cinema, and he's crossed over into various American productions over the past decade, mostly in supporting roles, but ultimately in this movie, I don't know that I go quite so far as to call him a co-lead with Keanu Reeves, but he's pretty close to fitting that criteria. You know, I was drawn to his character's emotional journey almost to the same degree that I was connected with this continuing, evolving arc of John Wick and his character. They're old friends, there's a brotherhood between them, but circumstances have them pitted against each other. And later on in the show, we might get a chance to talk about Creed 3, and there's a similar storyline there with brother figures who are now, you know, facing off against each other.
Yeah, Yen was phenomenal in this, and I'll agree with you. I think that he definitely had more speaking lines. I think if you compare the two, more speaking lines than John Wick. And an interesting thing about his character, he played this blind assassin, and you know, we've seen him play a blind character before in Rogue One, and you reminded me of that. I'm like, yeah, that's why it just felt so natural to see him in something like this. To me, he shined quite well in this film, and I loved his action sequences. There were some unique things he did, utilizing his blindness and how he took care of some of his opponents. There were some wonderful set pieces. The cinematography, I've got to mention that. The cinematography, the lighting, the sound, all of those things were superb and spectacular in this from the opening, and that did not let up. There were some choices of utilizing overhead cameras looking at fight scenes within a building from room to room to room. Really, really loved that. Not the first time that we've seen that kind of thing happen, but the first time I think we've seen it in a John Wick film. And that really spoke to me. Those were things I really did appreciate about John Wick 4.
Yeah, the overhead shot that you're mentioning, it's an extended long take scene, and really that's one I'm probably going to be thinking about for the rest of my life. And it's an homage to the famous shot at the end of Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver, where the camera pans overhead throughout multiple rooms of an apartment, and it's in the aftermath of a very violent event in Taxi Driver. And in this case, it's 5 minutes straight of John Wick just wreaking havoc on dozens and dozens of assassins who have been dispatched to take him out, and the camera following the action, painting from room to room. So very much it is influenced by Scorsese, and also De Palma is known for doing that a lot in his films. We also get a great 360 shot with John Wick. The best way I can describe this is John Wick at the center of a swirling vortex of motorcycle riding assassins.
Yes, the roundabout scene in Paris was a phenomenal scene as well, and that went on for several minutes. I will say I love those two scenes. Are my favorite two scenes of the film as far as action sequences.
Yeah, I think it might be the most entertaining use of a European traffic circle in a movie since National Lampoon's European Vacation.
Yes! I knew you were going to go there, and I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did.
I had to.
Any other thoughts you want to make sure you share, negatives, positives?
One more, I want to mention Scott Adkins. And Scott Adkins, I got to interview him a few years ago for a film he did called Legacy of Lies. And he's one of the most prolific action martial artist actors of the past decade, two decades now. He pops up all over the place. He does like 5 movies a year, and he's just absolutely incredible. And when I saw he was going to be in this film, I was like, okay, that makes sense that he's going to pop up in like the most popular American action franchise. But wasn't expecting him to look the way he did. He's in these incredible prosthetics. It's almost like a Kingpin, Wilson Fisk-like character. But what I love even more is that despite being presented as this massively, heavy and cartoonish type individual, he still gets to put his martial arts expertise and his hand-to-hand combat skill set on display. So, like, you're not expecting him if you went into this not knowing who Scott Adkins was, you would be completely shocked to see the mobility that this guy has. And the scene with Scott Adkins facing off against Keanu Reeves does not disappoint.
And I'll say that up until this point, Reeves has dispatched hundreds of people already. And so you're like, okay, this guy's not going to stand a chance one-on-one against John Wick. But this is really, I think, John Wick's first true competitor that can take him down in this particular movie. And he does take him down a notch or two or a floor or two in a particular crazy dance party sequence at some dance club where all this chaos is going around. People are getting beat up and killed. The dancers don't even care. They don't pay attention to it. It's just like another Saturday for them.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pretty much just like the typical dance clubs we have here at the Manning residence on Friday nights. So, yeah. So it's kind of felt like I was right at home. So.
Well, John Wick 4 for me did not truly satisfy. I loved the first three, and I felt that the franchise continued to get better in different ways. This one left me feeling, other than the scenes that I mentioned, it left me feeling that I'd seen this really before, and it was too long for me. I think that a lot of people are going to love this, especially those who just love pure action. There's a lot of pure action, not a whole lot of pure story in this, and honestly, that's not why you go to see a John Wick film. I do feel like this leaves it that if we did not see another John Wick film, it did answer some questions and had a fitting conclusion. So if John Wick is gone, I think this does that. But I was not in love with this film, in love with aspects of it, but generally it left me feeling like I just think it was overkill. And I think I'd love to have seen this about 30 minutes shorter. I think they could have cut some of those scenes, and I would have enjoyed it even more.
Yeah, it could have been shorter, but at the same time, I'm not complaining that we got 30 to 40 extra minutes of a bunch of John Wick madness. And yeah, I know you said you liked it, didn't love it. I understand exactly where you're coming from, and everything you said completely made sense, but I'm still going to say I'm in the full-on love camp, and I think I'll give it a B+. Just objectively speaking, you laid out your points and made some excellent points, but I think just personally, I still loved it, but I'm going to give it a B+ for John Wick 4.
Okay, and for me, I'm settling at a B-. Action, just pure action fans that don't care about anything else but action, they're going to be more in your range of a B+ or something like that. But I think I wanted a little bit more out of this than I got. John Wick 4 in theaters now. Glad we got a chance to check it out. This is a heavy R rating. I'll let you know that for violence. And it is violence on a scale unlike you've probably not seen in quite a while. So take that in mind as you check out this or choose not to check it out. I would not take small kids. This is not a small kid kind of film for anybody. And I did see a kid at this screening that I thought probably shouldn't have been there. But I will leave it at that. We are going to take a quick intermission. We're going to come back, briefly talk about Creed 3, and also hopefully we'll be able to talk about a game that I don't think Thomas has ever played right after this quick intermission.
Is that a good job, FBI agent? Get to travel around and stuff?
Sometimes you do.
You know, we get a lot of detectives here, but I must say I can't ever remember one as attractive.
I graduated from UVA, doctor, and it's not a charm school.
Clarice Starling wants nothing more than to make it at the FBI. But so far, turning heads is easier than getting ahead.
Jobs come up, and I thought about you. Not a job, really, more of an interesting errand.
Who's the subject?
The psychiatrist Hannibal Lecter.
Now, her new assignment might be biting off more than she can chew.
Crawford's very clever using you, pretty young woman.
Dr. Lecter, my name is Clarice Starling. May I speak with you?
You know what you look like to me with your good bag and your cheap shoes? You look like a rube.
Perhaps you'd care to lend us your view on this questionnaire, sir. Did you do all these drawings, Doctor? All that detail just from memory, sir?
Memory, Agent Starling, is what I have instead of a view. I tell you things, you tell me things. Not about this case, though. About yourself.
Are you hitting on me, Doctor?
What you're doing, Miss Starling, is coming into my hospital to conduct an interview and refusing to share information with me for the third time.
People will say we're in love.
Maybe you can decide for yourself whether or not I'm qualified enough to do that.
Just do your job, but never forget what he is.
And what is that?
Jack Crawford is helping your career, isn't he? Apparently, he likes you, and you like him, too.
I never thought about it.
Your first lie to me, Clarice.
Jodie Foster
You fly back to school now, little Starling.
and Anthony Hopkins in the most romantic movie of the year.
Oh, Clarice, your problem is you need to get more fun out of life.
The Silence of the Lambs.
You mean this is like a clue from a real murder case? Cool.
Just ignore him. He's not a PhD.
Hello, welcome back to Meet Me in the Movies. Noel T. Manning II here, hanging out with Thomas Manning. And if you look over Thomas's shoulder, you'll see a poster for Creed 3. And behind me, I've got this cool little Funko Pop here of Rocky. We're going to talk about Creed 3. Now, Rocky does not show up, but Creed 3 would not have... He does not show up in Creed 3, but Creed 3 would not have happened had it not been for Rocky. So we'll lay that out there. The movie has been out for a few weeks, and Thomas and I got a chance to check this out, and as well as a lot of other people. Big franchise win for the Rocky verse, and even now spinning off into the Creed verse, and there's a lot more to come for that. And for me, always excited when I get a chance to check out boxing films. And especially when they're connected to something like this franchise, because you know for the most part they're going to do it and do it well and put the effort into it. And for this one, Michael B. Jordan got a chance to direct for the very first time, and that's a very difficult thing to do, and to take on a franchise like this and try to pull it off when all eyes are on you, maybe even more difficult, Thomas.
Yeah, as Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut, I think I can already confidently say that he's one heck of a director. His visual ideas are just so fully realized, and the action in the ring, definitely want to talk about that. Boxing is a chess match. I mean, I don't know from personal experience. I know you have a little bit of personal experience yourself in boxing, but it is a chess match from what I've heard, and it's just as much of a mental competition as it is physical. And the way in which this film drives that theme home, going back to the comment I made about the visuals that Jordan creates as a director, we haven't really seen something like this in a live action film. And the last 30 minutes of this movie might be my favorite half hour of any Rocky or Creed movie. We get the classic training montage, and it just like ignites something in your heart that makes you just want to jump out of your seat in the theater. And I actually had a fun opportunity to watch this all alone. I went to like an afternoon matinee, and I was in the theater all alone, and I was just like, This is so incredible. Just the energy that's coursing through me right now. My blood is pumping. It's great.
Yeah, it's a kind of film that it's interesting you should say that, because I went to watch it with a very small crowd when I saw it, and I felt the same way. Just that energy, that excitement of wanting to bob and weave and throw a few punches myself. But this is a film that will do that if you love sports films, especially if you love boxing films. But you add to that, if you watch this with a larger audience, it intensifies that energy, and you feed off of even more so. There are scenes of this that are taking place in large stadiums where people are watching boxing. So it feeds to that audience perspective. You talked about some of the sequences. There were some, and I've seen a lot of boxing films, Thomas, but there were some sequences, the way they were shot, that I've never, ever seen in a boxing film before. Earlier, a few weeks ago, when this movie was just getting ready to get released, we had Douglas Davidson on here talking about how there were certain aspects that were inspired by anime. And if you've ever watched any anime, even if you watch very little aspects of it, early on you will see exactly what Douglas was talking about. There are certain scenes and certain frames, and you see Creed in some of these early matches looking, and he's eyeballing exactly what he's going to do next, and he's taking his time, planning what's next. Like you said with the chess match.
Chess, yeah.
And it happens, and it's beautifully the way that's shot. And then there's another scene where Creed is fighting one of his childhood friend. You talked about that childhood aspect of a friend from the past, and they're having to kind of square off against each other. And there's one particular round that is taking place inside of the Dodgers Stadium, I think is where this is happening. And one round where they completely disperse the crowd. The crowd's completely gone. It's just the two of them in a ring together, almost in a prison cell together, just fighting, no other distractions. And the way that was shot was beautiful, and I've never seen anything quite like that done either.
Yeah, and the antagonist character in this film is played by Jonathan Majors, and I don't think Jonathan Majors is human. And I say that both in terms of his extraordinary acting ability, but also his otherworldly physique. He looks like he could be sitting on the Council of the Gods that we saw in Omnipotent City and Thor: Love and Thunder. He's just one of the most built individuals I've ever seen. And you do mention the story is very Shakespearean. These two men who used to be like brothers, but they fell out of loop with each other and took two very different paths in life. But now they're back on a collision course. But even after all this time, they still know each other so personally, and they know every move the other is going to make, both in and out of the ring. There's one shot where they're standing on opposite sides of a wall, but they're walking away from each other, but they both stop and basically look through the wall at each other because they know exactly, as I said, each move they're going to be making at any time.
Yeah, the movie is Creed 3. It's continuing to do well at the box office. If you like sports films, this is the most successful open for a sports film ever, and that says a lot. We're going to be seeing more of Jordan behind the camera, and to be able to be behind the camera and in front of it for the same film, that's even much more of a challenge. So kudos to him. A film well worth checking out, and I'm just really glad that I have, and I've seen it. I would see this movie multiple times in multiple sittings, as I have for most Rocky and Creed films, and just so glad got a chance to check this one out. What's your rating, Thomas, for Creed 3 that's still in theaters?
Solid A- for Creed 3.
I'm right there with you. Solid A-, bordering A. It's such a wonderful outing. Thomas, next week we're going to come back and hopefully we'll be able to talk about The Mandalorian. We'll talk about Ted Lasso back, and also Operation Fortune, and maybe Rabbit Hole, Kiefer Sutherland. So we're looking forward to diving in deep and talking more. But if you haven't seen the Creed movie, check it out. He's the son of Apollo. Right there, another Funko Pop. So for Thomas Manning, for all of us here at C19 TV, and if you're listening through WGWG, I'm Noel T. Manning II, and for Meet Me in the Movies, that's a wrap.
Many films to view until we meet again. Next time we see you, we'll gladly fill you in. We'll tell about the happy and the sad ones. We'll talk about the good ones and the bad ones. Many films to view till we meet again.